That's what the volleyball team was. That's what the women's basketball team. That's what the men's basketball team. That's what the golf team did. That's what the men's soccer team did. Football team. All these teams that were playing for championships last year. Well, maybe it wasn't their particular team, 3 years ago, but they've been around all these other teammates, or not teammates, but all these other classmates. So they're going to class with individuals that just played a national championship match.
Welcome to Building a Champion, the podcast where we dive into the stories and strategies behind successful teams and programs. Today, we have Tony Hoops from Northwestern College joining us. Tony, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Excited to talk with all of you today about the great things going on at Northwestern.
Well, you guys are in the middle of multiple incredible seasons going on. Start out with volleyball, currently sitting number one, fresh off a huge win that went into 5 sets.
Yeah, just an incredible team, incredibly blessed to be able to watch them play. They're a very senior-driven team with a coach that's been here 20 years. Just an incredible leader that he is, and does a great job with that program, leading kind of that calming demeanor, which is kind of fun. I'm a big Nebraska volleyball fan. My wife was a volleyball player in college as well, and so I watch a lot of volleyball. And so it's really fun to be able to see this team compete at such a high level. It's a lot of times when you have senior teams, you want them to be successful, but sometimes when kids are using their 5th years, they can get distracted in other ways. And this group has done a great job. They were national runners up last year and lost a 5-set thriller to Indiana Wesleyan in a national championship match, and are undefeated this year, number one going into postseason play. And so, yeah, that was another 5-set thriller we've had with Concordia. That's 3 consecutive matches that we've gone to 5 sets with them and won all 3. We've been fortunate to do that, but just goes to show the competitive value of it, and excited for the postseason for them.
Yeah, that matchup, they were number 1 and number 2. I imagine the energy in that building last week had to be electric.
It certainly was. It's something that's just hard to describe. Volleyball in the Midwest is incredible. It's super passionate fans, engaging fans, and they really understand volleyball. And so when you put that into an arena, and you got both teams that are, somewhat local with one another, it was a dynamic environment with students and fans, and 2 programs that have high respect for one another that'll both do very well in the postseason. So as a sports nerd, like that, to me, it was just a fun, engaging environment to be a part of. Something that we as student athletes and as ADs all just dream to be a part of. And it certainly was one of those nights that you'll remember for the rest of your life.
With a perfect 30-0 record as they head into the tournament, this isn't luck that we're talking about. The volleyball team has been consistently performing for years now. So what do you think is the secret to the program there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because they have been dynamically good for a long period of time. I think there's a lot of things, and it's not just this particular program, but if you look at successful programs overall, coaching longevity matters, right? And so, when you've got a coach that's been there for 20 years, a lot of times when you're there that long, like Coach Van den Bosch, it's easy to start coasting. And I feel like he just keeps getting better. So I kind of reference that, John Cook at Nebraska, similar thing. Like, they keep getting better. The great ones keep getting better. They challenge themselves. They're not satisfied with what they've done before, but they also have this contentment of being able to understand that every year is a new year, and being able to build upon that. And I think that's something that I really admire in coaches. The older I get is, it's great to have the high emotion, but those that are really able to keep that balance of composure are typically the ones that tend to stay in the game longer and truly enjoy it, because coaching is a hard job. So I think that it starts with that leadership at the top, that consistency. Volleyball in this particular part of the country is really, really solid. He's been able to recruit the best of the best in the local area. Our All-American and back-to-back Conference Player of the Year, she's an Orange City native, so she's a local kid, and has developed some just tremendous talent around her. And I would also say then, you got to be a great teacher of the game. So you can recruit great talent, but it's only as good as what you're doing to develop that talent, and then to be able to execute on a consistent basis. And so I think his personality is consistent. He's never too high and never too low. And as a result, his team is very consistent. And when you're a teacher of the game and you love teaching of the game, all of a sudden your players feed off of that, and now they're confident in what they can do. So all of those things put together, I think, is what enables them to be successful, and have withstood this test of time for long periods of time, and what they've been able to do with that consistency.
And then it's not just your volleyball team that's seeing success. The football team also on a roll right now. This is like the 8th consecutive season I think I saw of them making it to the FCS.
I believe so. I think that's accurate there, and a long-standing history even before that there too. And ironically enough, our football coach, I think this is his, I don't know, maybe 11th year as head coach, 10th year as head coach, somewhere in that time frame. But he's been here for 17 years overall. He was a coordinator before, and he also, was a graduate of Northwestern College. And so as a result of that, that consistency has made that program really great as well. We've played in 3 of the last 4 national championship games, and excited to see what they can continue to build upon that. So, they have been a dynamic defense this year. In years past, Northwestern has been known for their explosive offenses. And so they've kind of redefined themselves a little bit this year. We had a quarterback departure. Ironically, our quarterback, who was the National Player of the Year last year, had a great, unique opportunity to go play at the University of Nebraska this year as a backup. And so, all of a sudden, middle of June, we go from thinking we have the National Player of the Year coming back to we're relying on a couple freshmen to run the quarterback position. And they've done an outstanding job, but they're still freshmen. And so our offense has had to come along there. But it's a senior savvy defense, and they've done a great job of leading the charge with that and picking up the slack. And so they're finding unique ways to win, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the postseason. I hear defense travels really well, so we'll see how we can do that as we travel into the postseason here as well.
Yeah, that's a sign of great coaching, being able to adapt to the players that you have on your team and switch things up from what you're used to. So going from a dynamic offense to defense and still being at the top of your game is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's something that they do really well. Once again, it's a staff that's been there together. Our defensive coordinator has been with us for a long period of time. He does an outstanding job. Our offensive coordinator was a tight end here for us, and so they work really cohesively well together. It's a very unique culture. And once again, I'll go back to that program. They rely heavily upon 4-year players that they're going to bring in, build up, develop. They recruit locally very, very well. When I got here last year at Northwestern, we were number 1 in the country the whole year and lost in the national championship game. Every time I'd look at us, I'm like, that's the number 1 team in the country. Like, I don't feel like we're super explosive or super talented, but they're just so disciplined and so tough. Talent, then they obviously have some talent. You don't get to be national champion if you don't have some talent as well. But it's more about that discipline and toughness that they build within their program. And that's why they've been able to sustain success, because of that consistency as well.
You mentioned that national championship game last year. Take us back to it. What was going through your mind as they battled on the field?
Yeah, it was an interesting game. So, it was a rematch of the previous national championship game from the previous year. So we played Kaiser, which is out of Miami, Florida. And we had beat them in the national championship game the year before. So now you got the 2 teams matched up again. They came out and thumped us early on. We were down probably 3 touchdowns early on. We couldn't stop their run game. It was very unique. It was kind of like, what just happened here? We'd won 20-some games in a row. But the panic didn't set in. They battled back. We got it to a 1-score game, gave up a late touchdown, and ultimately weren't able to overcome. Kaiser was a very talented team and very deserving to win that game. But as I watched that game, it was fascinating to me how they competed against a very good team, how they responded to adversity for the first time all year, in which they really trailed big. It just goes, once again, like, that leadership really mattered, not only with the coaches, but it spreads into the players as well. Selfishly, I'm sitting over there like we had just lost in the national championship game of volleyball about 10 days before that. And then we lose in the national championship game of football. And I'm like, am I ever going to win a national championship like some selfish AD who showed up 4 months before and just riding the coattails of all these great programs? But they handled it much better than I did. I will say that.
Now, is there a potential rematch with Kaiser this year in the playoffs, or how's that bracket potentially looking?
I think there's a possibility of that. We'll be on the road in the first round. I'm not sure exactly where we'll be at yet. The first round starts. We got a first round bye, but we'll be on the road in the second round. But there's a strong possibility, if we could pull an upset, that there would be a rematch with Kaiser, and that would be an interesting dynamic. They have a new coach this year. Their coach left last year to go take the Lenore Ryan job, Division II job, and so they're very well coached yet, and they got a lot of talent. But it's been a healthy rivalry, and a unique aspect because you're halfway across the country playing one another. But it certainly has been a lot of fun to follow that, and just see the talent and see NAI football at such a high level is a lot of fun to see.
Mental toughness, such a critical part of sports. Speaking of individual support, how do you ensure that each player feels valued and motivated within the program?
That's a good point there. I think it is. We talk a lot about mental toughness. As a former basketball coach myself, I used to always talk about, well, we got to be mentally tough, and then you really like, well, what does that look like? How is that defined, right? I think we use this word toughness all the time. Jay Billis wrote the book, and we can talk about it a ton, but typically the programs that I've noticed that talk about toughness a lot are typically the ones that aren't very tough. Just like programs that talk a lot about winning, oftentimes aren't the programs that are winning. It's the programs that are doing it, that are living about it. They're not just talking about it. They instill it within it, but it's a mindset that they instill and they live out every single day. How do we instill that here? I think it starts with our mission, which is to honor Christ through excellence in athletics. Our vision is we want to bring in the best student athletes, not just in regards to players, but people and academics. We have a really high academic standard here at Northwestern College. And so you can't just be an excellent athlete. You've got to be excellent in your walk, in your daily pursuit of faith, but you also be excellent in the classroom. And if you're not going to be that, you're just not going to survive here. You're not going to be happy here. And so our coaches are really intentional with how they recruit to that. So we want to bring in the best fits. And then we want to focus on building. This is not a place that's going to be a transfer heavy market. We're in a town of about 6,500 people in the middle of Northwest Iowa, and it often gets cold here. So it's not exactly like, oh, wow, I want to go there. And people would ask me when I came here, why do you want to go to Northwest Iowa? Why do you want to go to Orange City? And it's such a unique culture of winners here because the excellence is spread into everything that you do from a community-based standpoint, the support that we have. It's a high level of excellence expected in the community, whether it's how you take care of your yard and your property to winning football games. It's across the board. And so it's really contagious. So we want to build that up. We want coaches to build them as people and make them into better players. And then we want to send them out. So it's bring, build, and send. And our send is we want to send them to national championships. We want to send them to graduation. We want to send them to great jobs. But that send component can't be done if we don't bring the right people here, if we don't build them up and then send that out. And so that, so you go back to this mental toughness. Well, our values are grit and gratitude, because I think a lot of times athletes have a lot of grit, but they don't really always appreciate what the opportunities that they have. And when you can have that balance, I think that makes a big difference. Competitive greatness is another core value of ours, and Christ-like is another value that we have. And so as we build that out and what we want to do, I think that then instills the mental toughness because we know who we are, and we know what we're seeking to be, and that we're not trying to be somebody that's fake. And when our student athletes see that, it's genuine then, well, now they understand the development phase. And it's not just about, I watched our volleyball team lose in a national championship last year, and they were upset, but that wasn't like that wasn't a time in life where it's like, oh, the world fell in on itself, right? Like there was girls on the court smiling because of the process and the journey that it took to get there, not just, oh man, my life just fell apart because I lost a national championship match. And I think that speaks to the mental toughness that our coaches really exhibit within their own lives, because yes, we all love sport, and yes, we all love winning. Don't get me wrong, I love winning a lot, and sometimes too much probably. But the end of the day is we focus on that development. And when your focus is on development and core values, then you can really keep things in perspective.
We've talked about the volleyball team, the football team a lot. How do you keep that mentality going across all of your teams at the school?
I share this story a lot, but our softball coach, so our softball program traditionally had not been great. This past year, they finished, I think, 8th or 9th in the country. We host our first regional event. And he shares this story a lot of times, which is, people asked him, how are your girls going to handle this? This is the first time they've really had pressure in the postseason. They won the conference back-to-back years, and now they're playing a top 10 team in the country. How are they going to handle this? And he shares a story, and I think it's so true, which he says, as they go around on campus, these girls don't know any different other than excellence, because that's what their friends are, right? Like that's what the volleyball team was. That's what the women's basketball team. That's what the men's basketball team. That's what the golf team did. That's what the men's soccer team did. Football team. All these teams that were playing for championships last year. Well, maybe it wasn't their particular team, 3 years ago, but they've been around all these other teammates, or not teammates, but all these other classmates. So they're going to class with individuals that just played a national championship match. Well, when you surround yourself with great winners, all of a sudden that becomes contagious. And so when I say excellence is contagious in our community, I think that's really true. And when you have a culture that is not built upon comparison, and you have a culture that's built upon building each other up, so that's not like softball is envious of volleyball. It's that softball is supportive of volleyball because they both want to be great. And we know that when success builds upon success. And so how do we build that culture then? Well, I think it's because they've been around that component. And so then when they get in these big game environments, they're not intimidated by it because they see other people in it and they thrive because that's what they anticipate. That's what they look forward to. I use a term a lot of times, you've never arrived, you've always becoming. And I think that's how our coaches and our programs are really coming with it, is that they're always trying to become something great. What's the next great team? Because when football won a national championship, well, the next year, nobody really cares what you did the year before. You can celebrate that when you're 40, but that next year, you got to focus on what you're doing. And all the guys that sit around a coffee shop, they talk about all the great times they had. But in the moment, if you sit there and celebrate what you just did, well, now you just wasted an opportunity for that next year. And so it's time to write the story of the next year. And I think our coaches do a really good job of keeping that balance and not being envious of one another, because that's all too often a lot of times can occur in collegiate athletics and just high school in general. Is that we get really comparative, we get jealous of one another for just petty reasons, and our coaching staff is not that. And I'm blessed to be able to lead them and come alongside of them in that journey.
I'm working to teach my children those rules as well.
Yeah, when you figure it out, let me know.
I mean, envy and jealousy isn't just in college athletes either. I mean, that's just in life in general. So to be able to instill that mindset of, hey, we're all in this together at that level, I mean, that can just transfer over to adulthood after college athletes. And
absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of sport, is it not?
Yeah.
Right? Like I talked to my daughter, who's a fourth grader right now. It's like, it's not about you just being a great basketball player, because she's not right now and got a long ways to go. I just want you to enjoy it and learn the life lessons from it, because when you put yourself in an environment and you're being evaluated by thousands of fans, you have to be able to handle that, so that when you go get a job, it's not intimidating to you, or you can handle feedback, or you can handle criticism, because you know what, a coach was hard on you at one point in time, and you also knew that they loved you at the same time too. But you're right, it's so hard to not, I just love sport aspect. When sport is done right, like that really develops champions. Then sport can be done wrong as well. There's no doubt about it. We've seen the ugly side of it too. But when done right, oh, it's such a powerful component for life lessons like that.
Both my girls do competitive dance, and sometimes people are like, you are crazy. Why are you spending all this money for them to go on stage to try and win a trophy? I'm like, that's not what I'm spending the money on. I'm spending the money on the lessons and the tools that they're learning in the classes with their friends by getting on that stage by themselves, that kind of thing. So I totally agree.
Absolutely.
So if someone's watching your program from afar, wondering how you guys are building champions, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. When I was coaching basketball, people would always ask me, or great coaches would say, if I came and watched your practice for 30 minutes, I should be able to know what your program is all about. I should be able to know what you emphasize, because you can't be great at everything, right? And if you try and be great at everything, you'll probably be great at nothing. So you got to be able to, like, what do you really value? You can't be bad at a bunch of things, but you got to be able to be focused upon what it is that's really important to you in our culture here. And so I would go back to our mission, vision, values. If you don't know who you are, then you'll just fall for anything, and you'll just keep chasing this trophy that really is fake in nature. It's an important trophy that we all want to win, which is success. But if your only success is based upon a win, you'll do whatever it takes to get there, and that means you're going to sacrifice a lot along the way. And that sacrifice could be your moral integrity. That sacrifice could be your family. That sacrifice could be, how you develop relationships. it's got to be much more than just the win. The win is the byproduct of it. And so if somebody from afar were to come in and say, well, what makes Northwestern uniquely special? I would start it with is it's the culture set by our college. And that starts at the top with our president. He's been here for 17 or 18 years now. He's a big supporter of Raider athletics, and he's a former athlete himself. But he has that unique balance of being super supportive and not trying to micromanage the athletic department, right? And that he lets me do my job. He lets our coaches do their job. I think that's a sign of a great leader. And when you got great leadership at the top, then it trickles down. And so, and then it goes into our presidential cabinet and our faculty and our staff. But we've got unbelievably great coaches here that over half of my staff has been here for 10 years or longer. That's unheard of in small college athletics. So why is our culture unique here? Because people stay here. And when you can stay at programs, you can build programs, right? Because then your recruiting will be stronger because we have over 1,000+ kids every single summer at summer camps that are elementary kids that want to be Raiders, right, in the future. Well, that's a huge recruiting advantage to us in the future. Well, why do we develop those camps? Well, it's because those coaches have been here for 10+ years, right? So then as you have that consistency there, well, now all of a sudden you're recruiting it well. Then all of a sudden now you can, when you recruit them well, now you can retain well because players believe that they are going to stay there and they're going to be involved in that process and be able to, that their coach is going to be consistently there for them. And that makes a big difference. And when you can retain well, then all of a sudden now you can expect to win. And that recruiting and retention is really important. I think at small colleges, a lot of times we focus so much on recruiting well, but the retention is the really big component of it. And programs that are retaining well, especially in today's transfer heavy market, those are the ones that are separating themselves. And I'm old school. I think we can still be great at retaining and developing people, and that's why we're going to be successful.
Well, before we wrap up and let you go, I do have some quick rapid fire questions for you. If you
boy, here we go. I wasn't prepared for these, so who knows what's going to happen on this.
It's the wild card here. What is your favorite pregame meal?
Ooh, favorite pregame meal. I would probably go, the older I get, I used to be a big runner, so it was always some sort of pasta, right? A good salad and a pasta, lasagna, spaghetti, stuff like that. As I get older now, it's probably more on the protein side, trying to be a little healthier, right? So I'd say just a good steak, just a good solid steak that is well put together, but not well done. It's got to be right at that medium rare. It'd be perfect there. So we'll go with that.
Got to change to fit that metabolism.
Absolutely, right? Comes with age.
Who's your favorite all-time athlete?
All-time athlete. I'm going to still stick with Larry Bird. I was a big basketball guy growing up, and for whatever reason, Larry Bird was always that unique athlete that I enjoyed watching. And yeah, I always appreciated his competitive drive and really appreciated his just greatness in a unique way. He was a very different player than a lot of others. Everybody loved the Michael Jordan era when I was younger as well, but Larry Bird was always just a little bit more unique. And so I'll stick with that. That's pretty old school for me there, but I'll stick with that one there.
And of course, your daughter now is your new favorite athlete, hopefully.
Absolutely, right. My son and daughter, they're right on it. They probably would not agree with your statement right there because they say, well, Dad's just always hard on me about things. So, but for the sake of the show, and if they're listening, absolutely, that is
building that mentality. That's why we're hard.
For sure, right?
If you weren't in sports, what career would you have chosen?
If I were not in sport, I would probably be, I would either be in sales and in a business component, but I wouldn't have said that when I was younger. Potentially, maybe in the ministry platform. I was kind of dabbling in that when I was in college a little bit there, kind of youth ministry, stuff like that. Found sport. I was a teacher for a while. So something that's impacting people, I'll put it that way. So, but, and now it's kind of meshed into some other things, but I don't know if I would do if I didn't have sport because it's been such a profound impact on my life. And I just love every aspect of it.
Go-to pump up song.
Um, this is a good one. I'm not great at songs. I love listening to music, but I'm not like really good at like who sings that song. What's the name of the song? This is going to sound really bad, but living in the Hall of Fame maybe is right now just sticking in my mind here because we're getting ready to do our Hall of Fame banquet, and I love interacting with people who had a lot of success. So I don't know if that's my go-to, but it's the one that's coming in my head right now. So I'll stick with that one.
Love it. And what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice. I think what I would go to is it may not be actually words, but an advice that my parents instilled with me on a routine basis, which if you're going to do something, do it well. And if you're going to have something in front of you, do it well. And if you're not going to do it well, then don't take the time to do it, or find somebody else who can do it well. And I think I grew up on a farm, and so that was kind of instilled within me. And it's not like they said it every day that way, but they exhibited it. So it kind of goes back to what I said before. Words sometimes matter, but actions matter more. And I watch my parents do things well and still see them do things well. And I think that's exactly what drives me, is that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. I'm going to do it the best that I can, because I think that's what we're called to do.
Well, thank you, Tony, so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Love the conversation. Appreciate what you're doing, and look forward to staying connected.
All right. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into this episode of Building a Champion. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more inspiring stories and strategies from the world of sports. We'll see you next time.